want to take a minute to tell you about the Articles of Confederation and what they were. After the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, people realized very quickly they would need a new way to set up the government. It would be necessary to figure out how each state would interact with each other in an official way, a way that they would pass laws. So they developed the Articles of Confederation. It was described as a firm league of friendship, a way that each new state would work together to manage the needs of the American Revolutionary War and all of the business of the new country moving forward. So it's an attempt to set up a government, and the Articles of Confederation end up being in place beginning in 1777 and lasting until 1789. We'll take a look at some of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation to understand why it didn't make it beyond 12 years. First of all, it was important to understand the context. Coming out of strong British rule, an authoritarian system, leadership by the king who made almost all rulings with Parliament. So the king and Parliament had held exclusive control, and each state, leaders from those states, wanted to make sure that they would have enough power and control in the new government to protect their own people. So there was a huge emphasis on local self-governance. People in Virginia wanted to be able to make the laws for Virginia. People in Massachusetts, South Carolina, North Carolina wanted to be able to make their own laws. So the Articles of Confederation left almost all powers in the hands of the states. States had the authority to collect taxes. States had the authority to control their own armies. States had the authority to make decisions in legal questions. But the national government, the federal government, did not. When we use the word federal, we're talking about the national government, all of the different states combined together into one unit. So we talk about the federal government today, we're talking about the national government that covers everybody. Well, back in 1777 and up through 1789, the federal government was very weak because the Articles of Confederation did not give any power to tax. There was no income tax. There was no way that the federal government could collect money directly from the citizens. All taxes were collected by state governments. And then the state would have to agree to share that money with the federal government if it wanted to. You can see how that could create conflict. Massachusetts might not want to share its money with Delaware if Delaware didn't have as much to offer. So there also were no federal courts, and that's a problem because if there's a dispute between someone in Maryland and someone in Pennsylvania, the Maryland court might reach one conclusion and the Pennsylvania court might reach a different conclusion about who is responsible. And there was no way for those two court systems to interact. Now we rely on a federal court system so that there is a national law, set of laws that the whole country has to abide by, and federal courts can overrule state courts if necessary. But that wasn't an option back under the Articles of Confederation. So you might have a disagreement, Pennsylvania doesn't recognize what Maryland wants to do, and there's no way to solve that conflict because each state was equally powerful under the Articles of Confederation. Finally, there was no executive leadership. There was no way for any laws to really be enforced by the national government. There was no president, and it relied purely on the willingness of each state to enforce whatever federal laws might pass. It was also hard to pass federal laws. You had to have 9 out of 13 states agree to any new law. And you couldn't modify the Articles of Confederation because any change to the actual articles themselves had to be unanimous. You had to have 13 out of 13 states agree to any modification. So that's briefly why the Articles of Confederation were weak, and we'll see evidence of the weakness of the Articles of Confederation emerge in Massachusetts in Shays' Rebellion, when a number of rural farmers who were angry about high taxes get themselves together and they actually hold a new uprising. They start to move towards a new revolution to throw out Massachusetts political leaders in favor of newly elected leadership that they felt would be more friendly to poorer farmers throughout Massachusetts. So the Articles of Confederation didn't work out very well. They were very weak. Too much power in the hands of the states.
Not enough power.
in the hands of the federal government. That's the Articles of Confederation.